Oh, welcome back, everybody. Although, why did you ever leave? I'm Layman Pascal, and this is the Integral Stages Authors Project, where we delve into writings emerging from the liminal, integrative, meta-modern, developmental, transformational, and regenerative spaces, or whatever that is altogether. Today we're going to go deep, or at least depth adjacent, with a volume from Michel Doorn and Birgit Viertlböck entitled The Cosmic Lens, subtitled A New Perspective for Thriving in a Disruptive World, and sub-subtitled Seven Steps to Handling Uncertainty with Grace and Co-Creating a Livable 21st Century. So if you're not into that kind of stuff, well, just kill yourself now. But for everyone else, strap in and let's chew our way to an earth-based educational approach that foregrounds both outer and inner ecology. In other words, shamanism, or at least something like meta-shamanism. So here they are. Hi.
Hello there.
Hi,
I'm
Layman. Nice
excited
meeting
to be
you.
here.
Let's discuss the languaging right up front, because in an email I received, you said this is not primarily for a so-called second-tier audience. I'm curious about your approach to the creative challenge of communicating from something like an integrative framework to a broader human audience, and what are your strategies for making complex frameworks more accessible to people?
Yeah, that's people always say as a cliche, oh, that's a good question. But it is actually a really good question. And it was a lot of fun to do. It was challenging, but it's also fun to do. So integral people can read this book on two levels. They can see how we did that, how we made it more accessible, and also read it for the content. What started this is my belief that not even teal/yellow approaches are enough now. We really have to start building out this turquoise um, awareness. So, and this is actually breaking one of the rules that you can only like talk up like half a level. But on the other hand, the question, what is needed now, is the question. Well, that's turquoise approaches, plus all the other layers as appropriate. So I used a metaphor, which is a pretty easy story about the cosmic lens, about using this lens. And we'll talk about that more when that comes up. I also really studied how these books can be made more easily palatable by kind of switching the normal philosophical scientific writing around. So first, we try and take away barriers. We also write a little bit about, hey, we're just normal people, look, we also struggled. And only then, halfway in the book, we get to the cosmological, metaphysical chunks. I wouldn't say meat, but salami slices, a little bit. And then bringing Birgit in, literally. So I started this after COVID, and then I thought, I can write until I'm blue in the face, or until my fingers are blue. But if people are stressed and anxious, which actually the surveys indicate, like the whole the world is stressed and anxious, nothing is going to stick. People will be stuck with coping. They will be surviving physically, but also emotionally. So I thought, I need somebody to address trauma quickly. And through serendipity, I found Birgit. Um, and she'll talk about that, I'm sure, because she has a specialized and quick method to release a lot of trauma. And I sent her an email. I said, "Hey, do you want to be co-author on a book?" And she goes, I mean, we never met. We never knew anything about each other. And then she said, "Okay." And that's how that started.
I think we had one or two Zooms before that. But it just clicked, yes. And we didn't meet until the book was finished personally. We just met this year. That's very funny. I want to add something to your question about the integral. You know why? I also think that because you said that, like half a level up, it's difficult for people. I think one thing is more people than we think are integral because I happen to be not that long in the community, and when I start talking to people, I know that how they are, and they never heard of any integral theory. So I think with this book, it's an opportunity to get this difficult, boring, sorry, dry, whatever, some people are afraid of to touch because it's so intense when it comes to the, real levels of all the models, that this book provides a very good entry point to the whole integral theory because it's touching it, it's explaining it, and I think many people will see that this is the theory behind it, but the practical outcome is already lived in their lives, and so that's what I think is I meet or that there are more integral people that we think no, from what I want to say. That was one thing I wanted to add why I love the outcome of the book, because it's really also addressing people who are already yellow or half turquoise or wherever and second tier, but have never heard of second tier.
And to add my 2 cents, I don't give a shit if somebody's integral. I want the work that's needed to be done. So in the book, we describe 4 barriers, and there could be more to doing this work and getting out of anxiety. And actually, one of the barriers is a yellow barrier. And we describe that like getting stuck in amassing more and more information and wisdom. So that is particularly aimed at, let's say, integral people that have very large libraries and don't go and work in soup kitchens enough. So,
Yeah,
Or
this is
don't
great.
care about their bodies, which I think is and still, as being yellow or turquoise, you still have first tier shadows. That's the thing, that the shadow work is important, and that's why it's for all, for first and second tier
and and
audience.
and first tier benefits. Don't forget
Yes,
that.
yes, yes.
Um, Another center core piece of the book is pretty blue because I thought, okay, whatever we talk about needs to be anchored in something. And I chose the age-old laws of the universe for that, to be rid of religion, to be rid of New Age. Uh, and I think it's hard to argue with something that already showed up 2,000 years ago and is showing up again, and in Rumi's writing, and even Jesus. And you can actually see so many of these laws correlate with ecosystems and quantum physics. So that's why that's in there. And I would say, without categorizing too much, that's something blue people would be able to relate to, bluish people.
Hmm. So I relate very much to Birgit's notion of there being more integral people than we know. I used to make this distinction between what I called integralists and integralites, right? There's people who know and believe in the theory who aren't necessarily integral. It's just some information they've heard about. And there's a lot of people out there who have the intuitions or the vision structures or the personal maturation without any of that terminology. However, I'm really intrigued by you, Michel, saying, yeah, it's not even especially for, I mean, it is, but it also isn't just for a bunch of integral people who we don't call integral. It's also for the bulk of the human species who has to go through a readaptation and a healing and some kind of progress at this period in history. But if that's the case, and they don't necessarily need to be people who have these more elaborate cognitive vision structures, why even have a cosmic lens? Like, what's the point of learning a big picture? How does that help? Either one?
Yeah. It's
Um,
my word I want to drop in is detachment. Detachment is the word for success and getting free in mind and anywhere. But Michiel, go ahead.
well, it's necessary to expand our awareness, and you can, and that's not metaphysical or about consciousness. It's about supply chains. It's about COVID, which was actually right after COVID, I started thinking about this book. And so if we at least get a feeling that there is a bigger picture that will bring a certain ease, uh, because we can also learn how to get more comfortable with systemic curveballs. And my favorite systemic curveball, which is, like I said, nothing to do with consciousness or integral, was this ship that somehow got lodged in the Suez Canal. And you go, okay, well, you steer a ship and things can happen. And like half of the world stopped with parts coming from China. I mean, that's a really simple example of how complex a supply chain can be. And I think people can understand that. Another aspect of your question is that through wisdom that has existed for a long time, and that's the only real integral Ken Wilber theory that is in the book, is it starts with ourselves. Like Rumi said, today I'm wise, I'm working on myself. And yesterday I was working on outer things. So it starts with ourselves. And that can also be the hook to help to say, hey, this may actually be something for you. Don't you want to have more ease in your life? Don't you want to be rid of most of your trauma? Not all, because that would take a lifetime or several lifetimes. So that's also the way to draw people in. It's okay to start with yourself, as long as you don't get like totally turned inward. At some point, you need to step out again.
I wanted to add something, that this coming from the medical side, I also realized that we are, fortunately, I would say, in a time where the traditional classical medicine, consumery, all things which we learned to handle the last 50 years don't work out anymore. Chronic diseases are increasing. There is a medical supply or like pills don't work anymore. So, and this is not an integral or first or second tier thing. It's like it's bringing the people, that's why I say fortunately, into this awareness, conscious, yoga, 20 years ago, only like crazy people, the hippies did yoga. Now it's kind of, you go to breathwork sessions and all that kind of stuff is really coming, especially, I'm just talking about the medical field, but it's really coming, the holistic medicine is coming into the first tier. And so this is why also solutions can be now different from this, you know, from this point of change.
So this notion of wisdom that has existed for a long time is really interesting, especially in light of, like Birgit is saying, the breakdown of the efficacy and or the trust in some of the more recent modern forms of producing meaning, looking after health, running societies and communities, things like that. So we can, like Michiel was saying, go back 2,000 years and look at this traditional period of time and say, well, there must be things in there that give us wisdom, and they've persisted because they are useful sources of wisdom, and we might need to reintegrate that. But on the other hand, if this book is an introduction to the online course, which is more focused on the shamanic and on like a 40,000 year history
And
of
the
wisdom.
trauma.
Yeah. So what does the
Yeah.
40,000 year lens give us that the 2,000 year lens does not give us?
I wouldn't time it. I wouldn't put a time to it, because, you know, the big goal at the end to get into that cosmic lens, into the better perspective, as you can translate it, is that you really get out of time at all. So like Eckhart Tolle's the power of now is the major goal of it, that when you step out of time, so it doesn't make a difference if it's 2,000, 40,000 or whatever, that to make people really feeling that now and flowing with the now. And this is I would say difficult to describe if you never had this kind of bliss experience. So but if you have, it's like this absolute flow where you think, you know, like, wow, it's all world is full of synchronicities. And what so at the end, it's a merge that you kind of wake up in that now and feel that this is the most important time. And that's the way to get there. Combining all it's a kind of reminding process, more a reminding than a learning. And that's the easy part for the two of us, because we don't teach them, we just remind them.
Yeah, and I would add lens of a much shorter time frame. I don't know if you want to start in the 70s or with the nuclear capability to really blow everything up, 60s, or even COVID. I started out with a survey of a number of thought leaders, but also beyond these thought leaders. If you ask people, do you think the world really has changed in the last 5-6 years? Almost all of them say yes. So there has been a big shift. And the question is, what does that mean? It means we need new skills. We need to have expanded awareness, both on a 3D level as well as on an inner level. And if you take that to these perennial wisdoms, it requires some imagination, but it's not all that complicated, really. A good example is as within, so without. And I was reminded when Birgit was speaking, and she has a wonderful way of putting that. She says, well, like inner chaos, outer chaos. Why don't you say that? And also why trauma healing is so important. Remember, Birgit, how you would say that?
You mean the synchronicity, the eights, there's the frequencies, or
No, that if we have an inner chaos and anxiety, that is also the world we create, and vice versa.
yes, definitely. So yeah, I call it yeah, that it's actually I'm working with negativities in the system. So trauma is a negativity in the system which is still kind of having an effect on our real frequency. So when you have your like when you're in your original frequency, this kind of Michiel, I call it Knirsch in German, you know, like the like this. Well, how would you translate that? So you have like um sorry, how would you so it's kind of when you have a guitar, so a guitar string, you know, picture a person, picture a professional guitarist in the streets, and if he has a guitar which has like rusty strings, okay, the rustiness of the strings is avoiding that the guitar is playing well, and he can be a professional one, he can be the best, but the song will be just ugly to hear, okay. So what I do is in that deletion therapy, we clean up the strings. We clean up the strings from that rustiness. And so by cleaning up the frequency of a person, the flow, the frequency, the sound is better when it's, you know, and the law of attraction is higher because this guitar player is then attracting much more people, and that's how the flow is creating after this. So I probably call it rustiness in the English version, which is kind of shadowing your real yeah, how you are supposed to be. And the rustiness comes from all this childhood attachment trauma, complex trauma, any kind of thing which is putting this on our strings. And so that's what, you know, literally is important, that we have this law of attraction with other people, that the synchronicities work out, that the flow works out. Because, and I tend to say that, you know, I wonder, you know, the person, it's not a person, I know that, you know, the source who has programmed the synchronicities of different people, you know, one life is kind of imaginable, but if you think about how every soul of us has this individual frequency, and we now kind of play together in that flow experience. Isn't that amazing how that is composed together? That we meet on a certain time, in a certain space, and how that's working out. And it's at the end, it's just frequency, which is having the effect to it. And
And
that's why this is very important.
going back to your first question, very, very little of this, what Birgit just said, is in the book. However, she will introduce it in her personal guidance. But the book contains a straightforward chapter on, hey, sometimes things are lonely. Sometimes it's hard to find peers, you know, when you're struggling with these things. So there's a chapter on how to find your tribe, which everybody can relate to. But what Birgit was saying is the underlying.
Yeah. Or like finding out your vision, your principles, your values. This is all in there. So it's really a hands-on book, you know, but you can't deal with personal trauma in a book. It doesn't work out. That's why we have the course. And in the course, there is the complete trauma session included. Because we think it's essential for the real breakthrough.
Yeah, it does sound essential. I love this concept of rustiness. It's a great metaphor. And
Yes.
the idea that like if you have more elaborate forms of personal or cognitive development and it's all rusty, then what does it matter? Right? And then also if you have non-rusty strings, then you can be healthy and adaptive at whatever level you're at, and probably your chance of naturally evolving goes up. But also, I think this intersubjective community element is really important too, right? If the strings are rusty, I mean, even if you found your tribe, if you can't resonate with them, then what good is it to find them?
And we inherited some of the rustiness, because I'm much explaining of that with epigenetics, because we also inherited a lot of the rustiness. So when you think about transgenerational trauma, this is also a very big thing, which is kind of, you need to really address that, because this is also influencing the rustiness of your personal strings.
Yeah, and then also for the integral reader who reads it in between the lines, there is this barrier of, hey, you're excited about joining this group, but is actually anything happening, or are you just sitting in a circle, which is a big green pitfall? We just don't call it green. We say, hey, have you encountered that? You may want to make sure that there are guidelines that actually lead to action. So just simple steps like that. But it comes from very much from integral theory.
That's an essential component, I think, because there are skills to learn from sitting in a group, and then, in more advanced communities, you can have these really elaborate groups where everybody's sharing from different parts of themselves and reflecting on their sharing and reflecting on each other's sharing. And for some people coming in, that's a really exciting thing, is to start to learn to have that communication capacity. But if you've been in that space a little while, it can become very claustrophobic because it seems just
Yeah.
endlessly circling around and getting stuck. Whereas what we actually need is to form deeper bonds and learn to function as teams with each other in the actual world.
Yeah. And we also allow for space. We put it in a leadership for the 21st century that leaders allow for emergence. So also stripped of how you say woo-woo language, we say, hey, allow the others to work together, to co-create. So we do that, and then we say co-creation now is not, it's also about listening to what wants to emerge, which is nothing new in the integral space. Well, it's pretty new, actually. It's maybe 10, 15 years and really important. But listening to what is beyond what humans come up with, what is the voice of the earth, or what is emerging from this group, this space. My absolute favorite metaphor is architecture. And there are some architects that work with this. They really go and sit on that plot, and they feel what can be built there. And I think Frank Lloyd's right. Falling Water is a perfect example. Nothing else could have been built there in such a beautiful and profound way. So making listening better to what wants to emerge can be formulated in a way that people understand it, that it's not this magic or that some god has to come down and tell you what to do. But so we paid attention to that as well.
And what I also like in the book is that I just looked it up here, I just looked up, is this the 8 characteristics of wise people in the 21st century. It's really resonating me as a post-Orange. I'm coming from 20 years of science as a researcher. So that is kind of, I like that one because, when you see that other wise people have been like this, and this is a kind, Mick did cite, so it's a research work, and he cited it also here. So this is kind of like, that wise people have empathy or recognizing patterns or the ability to zoom out, so that you really see that you're not like following the path of the two of us, the two crazy ones here, who's saying that there is hope, but that you really see that this is characteristics which you can, which where there are ways to um, what's the word? To integrate and to achieve and to really fulfill. It's possible. And we are all wise in when you let go of the old wounds.
I really like that section of the book, The Eight Characteristics of Wise
Yes.
People in the 21st Century, as one of the things I've thought a lot about in terms of how do we generate a new eldership culture that's appropriate to this moment and the emerging future on this planet. One of those things is how do you recognize who might be an elder in a way that's overlaps with but isn't the same as just being older, right? So there are these internal characteristics, but there's also some interesting external characteristics. And I'm curious, with the emphasis on embodiment, what you look for in the embodiment style, in the body of a person. Is it a glint in the eye? Is it a way they stand? Is there a way to tell without listening to their language that someone's a wise 21st century person?
I want to comment on that one because I was meeting Susanne Kogreuter in at the Integral African Conference, and her and um, oh my God, I forgot his name. Anyway, some elder people there, and she said in her talk, that now in her age, like nearly 80 or something, she is able to talk out the truth and to kind of also disagree what Ken Wilber and the other says, or at least, tell other aspects of a similar story. And she presented a wonderful talk, by the way. And so what she said, which resonated with me, was elderwise people dare to tell out loud what others just think. And I was kind of interrupting her and saying, this is not an age thing. You just, because I continuously do that, I just don't care what people might think what I say when it just comes down. So I'm continuously channeling, and when it's coming out, I'm just telling it. And so I think this is one when you have this when you feel that what you say is important and you have a humble and loving heart which is covering that information, then I think you are one of the elder and wiser people, independent of age. And when you dare to speak out loud things which are not accepted commonly. And that was the thing with my everyone who I'm telling about the therapy, that the session, that there is a 1 day session, 1 day, um, which is kind of sufficient to work with the whole life. People say, therapy has to be long. And I say, it's just a mindset thing that therapy has to be long. So yes, that's one of the way why I'm telling, I dare to tell out, I dare to tell different, not the common sense part. Sorry.
Yeah, my answer would be that you could recognize wise people from their listening capabilities, and their body language that does resonate with the center of gravity on the developmental spiral. And it's actually so much fun to practice. I used to give little classes about that to really be in that red or blue or even green. So people that flow easily, and you can call it vibration, which it also is, but it's also the skill to flow and adapt without losing their power. I don't want to say authority, but without losing their power.
There's not a lot in this book about gender and sexuality. Um, Do you think that the way it's being communicated is equally applicable to males and females?
Yes. Yes.
I would say yes, but a very, very strong underlying core is that we need more, to put it in the purple, more of the sacred feminine. We talk about Father Sky and Mother Earth. One of the modules in the course actually talks about that. Masculine and feminine and unhealthy masculine, which also creates unhealthy feminine, and how to recognize that and how to heal that. It touches upon these topics. It doesn't go very deep into it because that would be a whole different course. But yeah, I think it's very, very obvious that healthy feminine has to become much more prominent next to healthy feminine. And now we have both definitely unhealthy masculine, but we also have unhealthy feminine.
Yeah.
So that is, yeah, I agree. It's not expressed.
I would say it's an empowerment book. So it's about empowerment and not, if it doesn't make a difference if it's female or male empowerment. It's just really empowering everyone to go beyond and step into their own divinity at the end. And I like it.
Start on that, yeah.
Hmm?
And get a start on that. The book deliberately offers easy steps to start. And as I'm sure I've seen, it's a process book. It doesn't offer, there's no solutioneering in it. And deliberately wanted to stay away from that.
Yeah, it's more about resonating and reminding.
One thing I
go ahead.
quickly want to bring up. So Birgit has her experience in medical and veterinary science research, and now also very much in her healing modalities. I actually come from an environmental engineering background. So I have all this also scientific, a little more practical maybe. So I have the world, the environmental, the ecological background. So I think that makes for a great combination of the two of us. So we're quite complementary there.
Yeah, I appreciated that in both reading the general book, but also looking at your individual stories. The outer and the inner ecology seemed like a necessary pairing in order to address any of this. Um, we mentioned eldership a couple of minutes ago, and I think eldership is a good framing for some reasons. It's visceral and it's ancient, but there's another framework in this book that's similar, which is intergenerational collaboration. And I'm curious about that because there's a kind of a breakdown of the generations and what they're like and how they might interact. But how general, how global are these generations, and how much are they, sort of an artifact of media and capitalism and in the G7 states or something like that? Are these sort of human generations, or are they culturally specific?
Let me take a first stab at this. Very simple. Think orange. Think baby boomers. It's a huge market. And they have things to say. They have money to spend. Some are very wise. Others only play golf and may still be wise, but only play golf. Live in their bubbles. but it was just important to call. There's so much pressure on being useful, and the young people and the whatever techies are going to solve it all. So we deliberately wanted to make a point that Gen X and baby boomers need to be there as a market, but also as a large segment of the population. And I think we need all hands on deck, old and young. So that was the simple answer to your question.
Yeah.
Did you want to add anything, Birgit?
I'm just thinking, that this coming from the family systemic view, there is lots of hurdles in the connecting the generations and kind of shaming, blaming, and shaming and blaming is a transgenerational thing. It's coming from the church or from possessions 12,000 years ago. It's
Advertising.
advertising and all that, yes. And so the intergenerational collaboration should be healthy again, I would say. Should be healthy again, but it's only working via forgiveness, detachment, getting out of that shame, blame spiral. And so it's again inside out. So, and no matter, it doesn't make a difference who starts. If the Gen X starts or the Gen Z, the main goal is that they coming closer and that they realize what the one generation has as advantage and the other, and then they collaborate on that one. But in between there is, because one have money, one haven't money, and did they earn it or did they not? We need to have to get rid of that concepts at all and remember our own humanity. Like, what do we as humans, what do we need as humans? Do we need all the consumery? Do we need, so we need social interactions. We need love. We need connection, physical and psychological. So like really feelings. And that's what the one generation knows, the other doesn't. So it's a kind of sharing and comparison without this hurdles in between. And I think it can be achieved, but it needs the openness of both sides. Then it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, it needs to be this open, inviting space. We have talked about vibration or attraction, and we've given some principles. Okay, is this group coherent, or do they at least know where they want to go? So we don't talk about it, but it's also very much that as long as it starts out open and inviting, the right people will join and or leave again, or the wrong people would leave again. Regardless
or you
if
decide
they're
that you leave the
90 or
group.
19. Yeah. So we lay out the principles and a little bit of the process of how a group like that can be formed. But this principle of the right people will show up is also in our awareness, and it's kind of hidden in a book. It doesn't go that far, but that is also a really important aspect of how this would organically go.
Yeah, I appreciate it, what the book is focused on, which is both being very inviting especially to these different demographics that self-identify to some degree in our society, and in trying to overcome the sense of antagonism and judgment between them so that they can function in emergent groups with each other. I'm curious to speculate to the broader cultural situation and wonder about patterns that do some of that healing. Obviously, right now we don't have a situation where people of different ages spend much time doing anything together. So there's a loss of just the time to have that communication. It seems to me also that we have an economic system that likes to market to niches of people and sells more things if they're broken up. And also, it seems to me like there's an insufficiency in our historical education, because one of the things that helps you feel the other generations is that you're not completely identified with your own because you've had experience of what human beings were like in different eras of time. Um, I don't really have a question there except to think, is there anything else that you two would think in terms of how do we heal generational divides and bring them together in a healthy developmental project, sort of at the global scale, at the social scale, things like that?
In the bubbles I am in, I really don't see that. So I'm already in that intergenerational collaborations. So, for example, when you are, and I would call it conscious bubbles, I'm regularly doing contact improvisation dance, and there is people from the 20s to the 80s there, and it's people who are able to set boundaries and tell their needs, because contact impro is a very embodied version of dancing, and if and it's also very, and you need to develop skills when you're able to do that. So I think we need to go via a embodiment or other group things to meet in different generations, and formerly called hobbies. So if you have a hobby which is shared by conscious people or people you are like-minded or like-minded with you, it's easier. So I think this is what you need to change for yourself when you feel yourself stuck in a bubble with golf playing people. Sorry, that you just open up for other other hobbies which are inviting people of all kind of generations, and then you just meet them and you see. And I want to come back to the timeless thing. It's also the same for the age. At the end, there should be an ageless community, like, because the purpose or the drive, their inner compass is similar, and they kind of vibe for the same things. So that's how you meet, I would think. So that would be my advice, that you look for bubbles which are not like only for, I don't know, a certain kind of age or social class thing. Kind of open up yourself, get yourself open, and then you just meet people who can see that, that there are like-minded and ageless.
Ageless embodied hobby bubbles.
Yes.
Yeah, and what relates to this is already some time ago, I gave up the idea of critical mass. Yes, we need to communicate better. We need to be more open. We can learn a lot from young and from older people. But there is no need to really try and force or mesh this perfect group with different cultures and races and ages and men and women. Great if it works. Sounds like a lot of fun. But maybe another type of group of 90-year-olds are going to make that little difference that will swing something in our cultural developmental machine that we're in now. I don't know. I don't need to know. I just want to put in place in this brief book the possible principles and steps and openness to start exploring that for people. And how it works out, I don't know. I remember when I first came to this country, the United States, I thought, okay, how can I make a difference? Well, everybody goes to church here. Okay, so I joined this interfaith climate change group. And at first people would ask me, oh, to what church do you go? So I quickly learned an answer to say that. And I say, oh, I'm still looking around for church. And I also remember, of course, this group was pretty green. And they really were hand-wringing and about, oh, I wish we had somebody of color in our group. And in and of itself, that's fine and it's green. But I also constantly wanted to say, I don't care what color they are, as long as we can spread climate change wisdom to churches. So, and eventually there were more and more diversity in this group, and they hired somebody, so it took off. But for me, it's not a goal in and of itself. The openness and the intuition, not the intuition, the intention to invite others is what is important. And then whoever shows up, shows up.
Yeah, I like that. I like two aspects of that. I think the critical mass thing, you still hear this in a lot of developmental circles. Like, we need to get enough people to this tipping point, and then everything will change. And uh, yes, let's help those people develop as much as they want, but that's not the necessary piece. You have to move the whole system forward as best you can. And hmm,
And you need to start with yourself, and that's what we all forget.
And trusting that there is something greater, unseen, that is not necessarily going to mop up behind us, but that there is a source of wisdom that can also help co-create. And it's now, I think, essential to invite that source of wisdom, because I think as humans, with our technologies and methods, we're not really gonna make it. I think we need to open up to guidance.
hmm. Yeah, I mean, the
Sorry.
classic problem of utopian thinking, and integral and developmental circles and lots of spiritual communities have this problem, is that they over specify what has to be in the utopia, and then it becomes
Yeah.
fragile, and they spend all their time trying to make this one vision occur rather than helping everything heal and enrich and become stronger so that it unfolds a better world, but a world that will surprise us and not fit into our preset vision.
Oh, we can count on surprises, bad ones and good ones, and that's really exciting, actually. Absolutely.
Otherwise, life would be boring, wouldn't it? If we have all this already set up.
Well, that's a huge part of this book. There's a strong emphasis on how do we gracefully surf and work with uncertainty and chaos and complexity, because we have this tendency to try to use a model to solve a complex problem, and that often breaks or creates more problems than it solves.
Yes.
Yeah, I like what he said about the trusting, Mick. The trust that this you know, that this is a bigger plan, that you are part of that bigger plan, that you, when you follow the positive values of yourself and letting go your ego more and more, or working with the trauma you have, that this kind of is really working out. And that's what I love in that book, that it's kind of not, it's not a doomsday book. It's not like, oh no. But we also, we both don't know what the future will be, but it will be, we turn ourselves into beings who are open for anything, and then it will be better than we expected, of course.
Yeah, and for decades I've struggled with this word plan. There's no divine plan. We're kind of writing it, but there is this guidance. There's this, so yeah, how to word that? I haven't found the best way of doing that. But trusting is huge. Also building skills so you can trust yourself better. Very, very simple skills often. There was something else I wanted to say, and now I don't remember. So,
Well,
oh yeah, I do remember.
Okay, go ahead.
To me, the most profound section, which does relate to what we were just talking about, is the section on choice, because evolution, the universe, and I'm not talking about something 300 billion light years away, but in our Earth envelope, the way evolution works is through choice. It's through choosing. So that also implies that there always is a choice. So there always is some door that can be opened, because otherwise it wouldn't work. And maybe another philosopher would argue against that, but that's how I see it. So to become very, very clear and focused on choosing, not even what we do, but also on what we intend and what we put our attention on. Ian McGilchrist says attention is a moral act. That's all I know about Ian McGilchrist, because if I were to start reading his stuff, I would be dead when I got through it. But our attention is a moral act, and intention and clear intention and thoughts are also moral acts. They radiate out. If I think, oh, the person in front of me in the line is an asshole, I'm radiating out bad stuff. So if I learned myself to say, okay, I'll just wait, and this person probably has issues, it's okay. I'm learning how to choose higher vibration, to use the New Age term again, but it works, energies. So choice is super important, of thoughts, of words, of intentions, of what we envision with flexibility, and then the best as we can, because we're just human.
And feel that inner guidance for the choice is, we had the trust here, we had the choice, and we had the guidance. You also mentioned that before, and I really think this is one thing which we need to rethink, what this guidance is. This is nothing we learned in books, or we from our parents or teachers or whatever. This inner guidance is our true inner guide. And I was also complimenting on this choice chapter, and I still find it very important to say that our body is the guide of the now. Like, our body signals physical symptoms. Like, when you hear something, you get a stomach ache, or you get a sore throat, or you get like headaches or whatever. It's really, if you really think of that and try to, in certain situations, what you felt, that your body is really talking to you and that you really need to listen to that signals again, because this is the guide in the now. It's really coming down like a and it's your guide through that. We just forgot how to listen to that because we are still in an orange world where we need to function. We need to get up early. We can't have a nap when we slept bad or whatever. So this is kind of, for I would say 10,000 years of settlement, we kind of cut down that need of the body to speak to us. And that's what we need to relearn. This is the guidance.
And sometimes the guidance is nothing. And that's also guidance. I do shamanic journeys. I learned how to do that. I do them for myself. And sometimes I fall back in the trap of like, well, who should I date, Sally or Julie? And this guidance goes, you figure that out. Next question.
This is a really interesting inquiry. And like you say, there's a lot of complexity in guidance. The guidance might even be apparently no guidance. And I think, philosophically, it doesn't really matter. Whether there's free will or not free will, it looks the same. You still have to make choices either way. But the question of how you make a better choice is really important, right? And I think a lot of people would intuitively agree that they should choose the thing that has the higher vibration, but how do they know which one that is? And what are the possibilities of being deceived about that? And similarly with the body, like I think a lot of people would agree they should trust their body and trust their gut. But on the other hand, maybe they've been pouring 2 liters of diet soda into their gut for 40 years. It might not be trustworthy. Or the signal that the body gives you in the moment might be from something you ate 3 days ago and not from this situation. So there's a lot of complexity, both in how we apprehend energies and also how we apprehend the body. What are some useful principles for validating the prompts that should lead us to make better decisions, if that makes sense?
Validating the prompts?
Yeah, like we get signals, we get feelings, right? But
Mm-hmm.
how do we know which ones and which ones to trust?
I tried to explain it by the difference of intuition and gut feeling. Gut feeling is coming from a personal story, that I experienced something which was bad for me, so I don't do it again. And intuition is from the higher self, or from that source, which is kind of fueling us. So to get from your gut feelings, which can be influenced from your personal story and trauma and experiences, negativities, into that intuition, you really need to work on your negativities. You need to work on that triggering moments. You need to realize that you are still attached to your parents, or still attached to your former job, or still feel resentment to something. And this keeps you away from your intuition. And then it's easy. So really, it's a 1 second tip. Get rid of the things which are still attaching you to triggering moments. And then you hear your voice much better. And from the body, or from the physical body, how to listen to your body better is so one thing is I'm working with trauma, on the other I'm working with fasting. I'm working with healing, therapeutic fasting. This is my way to get the body into a very, very easy and fast way into this kind of reconnection again, because also the physical body needs to be helped to get rid of this past experience, bad food, whatever, by really letting go. And then there is this reconnection with the symptoms, with the signals. And it's no wonder that all the religions were proposing fasting as a spiritual process, because it really does that, and it helps you reconnecting to the body to the body signal. So one thing is like the anxiety psychological thing, and the other is the body signals. Like, what does it feel to be full? I forgot, but you also need to relearn that, and that's why I personally think fasting is one of the best and most efficient ways to do that. My kind of second name is efficiency. Do you know that I have, you read through the book, I have triplets. So that's why I always say, my second name is efficiency. I want to have methods which are working fast.
I would like to add to that. I think a basic answer about intuition or spiritual guidance, true pure spiritual guidance always has an element of love to it. If it really feels bad, don't do it. Also, we have our wisdom that we can improve on and experience. And this cosmic lens on just learning or becoming more comfortable with, okay, I'm not able to understand everything. I'm not able to see everything, but that's okay. So you're building self-empowerment. You're building that trust. So a really beautiful quote in the book from one of the survey members. His name is Martin. He says, the time of navigating with a blueprint and a map is over. We need to become comfortable with uncertainty and navigating with a compass.
Yeah.
And at the same time, have the wisdom of, okay, I need to know about the weather. I need to know that my shoes are proper for this trek. So it is possible, I would hope, that we do explain these things and touch upon them in a simple way. At least a way that's open to more people beyond the integral crowd.
Yeah, I love all of that. Trying to make sure there's an element of love in the guidance and developing this more robust human capacity to exist in conditions of uncertainty so that we're actually in the position from which we can make richer choices. And looking for, cleansing ourselves out, both physically in terms of fasting and emotionally in terms of the reactive response to traumas and triggers and things like that. And I think that points to there's an appendix in this book about the Delian method that's been mentioned a few times. Maybe you could give people who are watching or listening a sense of, like, what is that method like? What are the sort of basic mechanisms or processes used in that form of, let's say, trauma processing?
I would like to explain two things before, because I realized that I was in kind of putting that method together because I realized the normal things don't work out for complex problems. So when you think about the iceberg, that you have, for example, you have some, I always explain it with fibromyalgia, which is a very difficult to diagnose disease and has many aspects, psychological and physical and whatever. So it's a pain syndrome of the muscles. And when I work with a person who has fibromyalgia, I can work with hypnotic ways, with the subconscious ways. I can work with body. So I can work with the whole iceberg to clean up this. And I feel I will find links. And I realized after I let go of that patient that she might feel much better on the fibromyalgia. But a week later, she's coming with issues about relationship to her daughter. And so I was kind of bored is the wrong word, disappointed, I would say. I was kind of disappointed. And I was thinking, when I think of the whole iceberg as one piece, why not working on all the negativities in there in one session, a long session? And so this was the basic thoughts about how I invented it, because I wanted to free people from therapists. I wanted to connect them with their own divinity, with their own guidance. And that's why I thought, thinking about a process of all the stuff I learned from systemic family constellations, hypnotherapy, also some other NLP and whatever I learned, I kind of merged the best of it to realizing that when I address the whole negativities of the iceberg, and how do I do that? So it's with an emotional CV, so an emotional resume, which kind of sums up the major emotional down points of one's life. And this is a kind of one thing only, which you then start to see larger patterns, for example. And in this, so it takes too long to explain the whole method now, but like the principle is to have an emotional resume where we just walk through that and find with tools like visualizations, forgiveness, sentences, affirmations, energetic, sorry for using the word again, but really energetic ways to let that go on all levels. And one of the best teachings I had from one of my teachers was the easiest way to be healed would be if you touch someone on the on the forehead and say you are healed. It would work when the mind wouldn't be in the way. And so with that emotional CV, I give the mind a chance to be involved in the process, because it can tell the story, and it's just a story. The story once again, and see that it's just a story, and feel that it's just a story. And at the end, it's probably my energy and the love source I'm connected with, that I kind of be the most understanding person this person ever had. And so I'm the best friend of this person, because I really guide him through the whole thing, and find ways how to let go attachments and resentments, and that's letting go. This finally is such a moment of relief that it's a very, very so that one of the effects right after the session, and Mick can tell, because I wanted to Mick sorry, I'm just putting that in. I was of course also working with Mick, and Michel is already a very, very far developed person, wow. And yes, you are. And he was, because I wanted to show him, he was approaching me, and Mick, please say some words about the long-term effects of it, because it's sometimes it's difficult to explain, because you really connect with your true source at the end, going through the generations, and be that human being you intended to be from the first time your soul entered your body. And that's the main purpose of the thing, that we are all ourselves again, and not products of our parents and the society and the consumery and whatever. If you're really willing to be yourself, and it's a proud, not proud, it's mutig, it's courageous. It's a courageous thing to do that. I'm really aware of that this courage, when you take the courage, you're really becoming yourself. Mick, would you just add some sentences, because it's from my point of view, it's kind of always difficult to explain. But we worked a year ago, because I really wanted to show him, and just a few sentences about it, because I really think it's important.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty phenomenal method and skill that Birgit has. She doesn't heal trauma, she releases it.
I help releasing
everything,
it.
or help releasing it. And at some point, points in the session, she's actually really channeling. It's really amazing. So she's the scientist, PhD scientist, but she's also channeling this grandfather who was abusive or whatever. So the session is whole. It's not just like one aspect. It's not just cells that cause the fibromyalgia. It's the whole, and she's able to do that and hold that and still stick to a regimen, and not a regimen, but to be
A structure.
pretty structural and intelligent about it. So for me, the biggest effect was, I think it's about a year ago that we did this. For one, she really listens and also works with what she hears, because everybody can listen. Freudian analyst also listens. And that is already giving a release. I would say the effects are empowering, and it does take weeks or months to settle in. But I felt heard. I felt cleansed. I had some nuggets of information which are very personal that and were very important to me, that I was able to understand better and therefore also let go of. So I literally became in a better flow, in a more unobstructed self flow from her work. And she does, apart from an intake and a follow-up, she really does it in a day. And sometimes it's 6 hours, sometimes it's 16 hours. And she's there for you. It's amazing.
And it does sound long for the person, but it's as is your story you're telling. Like when you're the client, you tell your story. It's not very strenuous for yourself, because you kind of like you feel heard and you feel the space, and that way really, everyone who is with me is gonna, it can't be that long. They don't feel it. And for me, it's sometimes long, but I can hold it. But for me, it's easier to do that all in one thing, because then I can remember all the connections and guide through the connections. If you have a therapist, which you visit every like 2 weeks for an hour, you need like 50% of the time to reconnect through the stuff what you told 2 weeks ago. And that time you just, with the concept of having it in one day, finally just letting go the whole thing in one thing, you save a lot more, because you just don't jump in and out again. So that was at least my, and it's easier for me to hold the whole stories in one container. Yeah.
Yeah, for me,
it's like watching Hollywood movies, like a 3 cycles in a row.
and what I've said before, the reason why I was so eager to work with Birgit, I don't care if all trauma is healed. I care that enough trauma is healed that people can indeed start doing the work that's needed. First internally, and then finding these groups, working with older people, getting things done. I don't care if it's perfectly healed. It never is. And that's okay.
But the connection. You just feel more connection.
Oh,
You
yeah.
feel the guidance, and you feel,
Feel
and
80% healed. Yeah.
and the fun part is the synchronicities, really. That's the fun part of it. You know, I had people after that who told me, like, you know, suddenly my mother called me and invited me for dinner. How does that happen? I said, you know, it's about just the law of attraction that is now working out. And as I said in the beginning, like 1.5 hours ago, that I'm really wondering who programmed the whole thing. It's really a masterpiece, isn't it?
Yeah, it has been an hour and a half. So I guess we're getting close to the end. One of the questions that came up for me while listening to the two of you and thinking about you had mentioned, Michiel, that the one of the pitfalls that often afflicts people who are second tier or whatever we want to call that is this problem of being a compulsive researcher, of just always thinking you need to get more of the information. And uh, to some degree, when you enter into a new kind of worldview or world space, you do have to get up to speed on
Yeah.
things, and you get a different kind of information diet, and we all kind of always want to know what's going on at the leading edge. But I'm curious about the two of you personally. How do you balance on the one hand the healthy urge to keep being informed and this other sense that I want to not be compulsively just trying to research. I want to be comfortable with uncertainty and I want to be able to move forward without the paralysis of being an obsessive researcher. What does that look like in your own lives?
Well, for me, it is bringing this out there. Everything is ready, but now it's close to Christmas, and that's not the time to launch a new course. So I have to wait till early or mid-January. So that's still a lot of sitting behind a desk, but it's also really putting out as best as I can what I believe I can offer to the world. I am selective about what I'm reading. So skipping the rabbit holes, I'd say. And also using this openness, this intuition of what pops up. And social media can be a trap, but it can also be really wonderful of having information pop up. People that summarize books in a little YouTube, or beyond all the incredible nonsense, this wisdom that here and there is also on Facebook with a link to it. Okay, let's explore that, but make sure, it's not going to take more than a half hour. Integral life practice, staying healthy myself, doing nothing, walking around and just perceiving. So much is about perception and attention. To really learn that and hone that and calm that, and at the same time use it as a walking meditation. I love teaching, so I'll be doing a lot of that. And then we'll see where it goes. So that's a partial answer to your question. Birgit,
Yeah.
you have your foundation, which you may be very proud of. That's a outreach.
You mean my charity project in Africa?
Yeah.
Or yeah. I have many projects. So I'm also teaching the methods. So I invented also the combination of fasting and intuitive eating, which doesn't exist like such a concept. There is intuitive eating, there's fasting communities, and just to combine it. Anyhow, but I wanted to, if I understood the question right, is like, how do we gather information? How do we surf the waves of life? And I reduced So, really, I was the orange, okay? So really the orange.
Blue and orange.
Um, yeah, blue and orange, of course. And I feel now such a relief that the system is not based on hard work. It's when you trust the process, the information you need in that moment is coming to you. But there are two important things. One is the mindfulness and the slowliness behind it. And the other, when you do a little detours, especially about social media or also emotional eating or like any other aspects which you kind of blame yourself again for stuff which you didn't want to do, is self-forgiveness is also a very important thing that you are. So it's a kind of combination, but I really stopped learning is the wrong word. I stopped receiving informations from the usual pathways. I'm learning every day from my kids, from other people which I communicate with. So I turned from books to people and their inner knowledge and wisdom. And I
And
just love communicating about that.
and if I may
And I
add
don't watch
to
TV,
this,
and I don't, all the other.
well, and it's easy to forget to mention, you are with people, groups, or individuals healing, reaching out all the time. Not all the time, but a lot. So
Yes.
you're doing the work as well as
Yes, as you know, I'm in a society. It's called the Mindful Medical Women. We are German medical doctors, female medical doctors, and of course, being in a WhatsApp group with 150 other medical women, like, of course, this is nurturing all my medical input, but so I don't need to learn the conventional way. So yes, finding these kind of tribes is really helping to reduce the hard work of learning. It's more like flowing. And I keep on telling people that I'm so happy that I changed fields. So I was researching in immunology. I was 17 years working on immunology, and I would say the immune system is the most complicated body system we have. Like liver is an organ, and bones and whatever, and the brain is an organ, but the immune system is like kind of split around the whole body. Anyhow, it's the most, and I was always struggling with the mind, so with the knowledge behind, and now I feel so relieved because I don't want to work in the like really little things anymore, that I don't have to, that it's learning is not a working process anymore. Hallelujah, finally. It's just listening, opening up, and it's just coming to you. I love it. It's such a relief,
I
believe me.
remember my phase of reading everything I could get my hands on, and at some point you kind of OD on it, and you get selective.
I love the way you two bounce back and forth. I feel like if I had asked no questions, there still would have been a great interview going on here. You both just constantly have something to say playing off each other, so that's fantastic. I really enjoyed the book. I think it's the approach is very useful and very powerful. I like the principles that are involved. I'm very excited about the course, but mostly I feel like I just like both of you, and I feel like we're just at the beginning of getting to know each other. So I look forward to us coming up with some excuse to have another discussion in the future.
I can 2026. Is it 26?
2026. Yeah, I'm working on the committee to organize that as we speak.
Yes, yes. I'm a good friend of Tom Habib, by the way.
Ah, good. Yeah,
Yes, yes. I
he's
was visiting
fabulous.
him last year for a week. Yeah, and he's coming to the IEC, the European one. If there's the early bird is just finished, but You know, when you talk to Benze, you also are invited to come to Europe. So we see each other in May already.
Okay.
Well, thanks. I second that. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you. And yeah, Birgit and I will chat on forever. That's true. In a hopefully interesting way. But it's been a lovely meeting, and I want to thank you for that. The book is out, it's available.
It's an audiobook. I wanted to mention that one because we really focus to have it also read by a Canadian woman, not by the two of us, the two non-native speakers.
No, it's these damn young people, they need audio. And the easiest way to reach us is simply go to www.thecosmiclens.com. And there's an email on there, and people will know how to find us, I'm sure, anyway.
Or just type in our names. They're both so special that you just find us.
With your umlaut, yeah.
Yes.
All right, beautiful. Thank you very much, and I look forward to connecting with you again in the future.
So do we. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.